a black Gemara. Today's Daf is Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, which this is Friday's Gemara. We're continuing to explain every case in the Mishnah. The Mishnah discussed three different cases. One is just a single Yavam and a single Yavama. One is where you have a single Yavam and two Yavamas. That means that Reuben died, you left behind two wives. And then you did one kind of overture with one wife and another overture with another wife. And the third case in the Mishnah is where you had two brothers and Reuben had one wife, and each of the brothers did an overture. There are four possible overtures: two from the Torah, which is chalitza, and either severing your ties, or yibum, and two the Rabbanan, which is either maimer, which we looked yesterday what exactly it is, or giving a get. So now we're going to continue going through every single case in the Mishnah to analyze it before we conclude the Perek today. Says the Gemara, it says in the Mishnah, Cholas, the first thing you did was you gave her chalitza, and then ba'asa maimer, then you went ahead and you gave her a maimer, which means that after the chalitza you severed your tie, you decided to go ahead and give a maimer, which is an act of kedusha. Or v'nas and get, or you gave her a divorce afterwards, or ubal, and we said after chalitza nothing happens. And the reason why that is, we learned yesterday, is because after chalitza you're not living anymore. There's an aver, there's a lav, and Rabbi Akiva holds that by a lav, kedusha are not typhus. The Rabbanan agree, they hold by a lav, even though it's a sin, but the kedusha are not typhus. But we're following Rabbi Akiva. And then the Mishnah continues, what happens if you did first be with her, which means she became fully your wife, and then afterwards you did a maimer or a get or a chalitza, nothing happened. So how come the Mishnah doesn't spell it out? It says, why doesn't the Mishnah also mention ein acha bia klum? Why doesn't the Mishnah mention that after bia nothing happens? Abai Rabbi say, to me, maybe we should edit it and say ein acha bia klum. We should say that there is taka nothing after bia. So how come the Mishnah doesn't say that? So either you can learn Pshat, the Gemara is explaining, or the Gemara is saying that Abai Rabbi doesn't explain the Mishnah well. The Tana Didan, our Tana only focuses on Chalitza, because Hatoras Yevama L'Shuk Adifale. Why does our Tana focus on Chalitza? Because Chalitza is severs the ties and frees her up to the whole world. And the Tana likes to see her free to the whole world. Okay, then we continue. The Mishnah, it says, Echad Yevama Achas. Whatever we learned in the first part of the Mishnah, which is a single Yavam and a single Yavama, where he did a number of overtures to the same woman, then the Mishnah continues, whether it's one Yavama and two Yavamas, whether there is only one, Reuben only had one wife, or Reuben had two wives. Says the Gemara, Mastis is like Ben Azai. Mishnah definitely does not conform with Ben Azai. What's the story of Ben Azai? The Tanya we learned. Ben Azai makes a difference if it's Reuben had two wives and there's one brother, or whether there were two brothers. Ben Azai holds that if there were two brothers, the Torah gave each brother a right. So if both brothers made a maimer, they're both effective. But it's only one brother and two wives, and he was only given one right, and a maimer. If you gave a maimer to the first wife of Reuben, you cannot give a maimer to the second wife of Reuben. But if there are two different brothers, each one can give a maimer, because each one was given that koyach. So Ben Azai makes a distinction between a difference between one Yavam or two Yavamas. And our Mishnah holds there's no difference. So it says in what our Mishnah is like for Ben Azai, Tanya Ben Azai, yesh maimer acha maimer. When is there a maimer after maimer? B'shnei Yavam, maybe two brothers, Yavam achas, and one woman. But the maimer acha maimer, but there is no maimer after maimer. B'shnei Yavamas Ramecha, but with two Yavamas and a single Yavam, he can only affect one maimer, and that's it. Then the Mishnah continues, Ketzad. How do we Ketzad? What's the case of two Yavamas and one? No, Reuben had two wives and one brother, and we go through the exact same cases all over again. Maimer Lazu and Maimer Lazu, and we go, give a maimer to what? And it says that if you gave a maimer to one, you have to give a get for the maimer, but you can no longer marry either of them because Asher Lo Yivna, since you demonstrate you don't want to continue building the house, you have to give a chalitza. Says the Gemara, let us say that the Sayeh Lil Shmuel. Let us say that actually this Mishnah follows Shmuel. The Mishnah says he gave a maimer to two wives to Reuben, you gave a maimer to one wife and a chalitza to the other wife. Why did the Mishnah say you gave a chalitza to the other wife? Why didn't the Mishnah just say simply you gave a maimer to Leah and then you gave a chalitza? Because we're going to learn like Shmuel that since you gave a maimer, he says that since he gave a maimer, it's a different kind of relationship, and if you would have given chalitza to the one who received the maimer, it would not have released the co-wife from her. Why? because since the maimus is not, because the chalitza is not a full release, because you still have to give her a get for that maimer. So the chalitza is weakened. Because the chalitza is weakened, it's only effective to her plus the get, and it has no bearing on the co-wife. We'll need a separate chalitza. That's why our Mishnah mentions that you gave chalitza to the second wife. So it seems to support Shmuel. Says more layman say support to Shmuel. Shmuel says chalatz lebalas amayim. If you gave chalitza to the same woman, you gave a maimer to the nifrat tzarasa, it does not exempt in any way the co-wife. For the reason, because the chalitza is a weaker chalitza, because you need to get with it as well. And by the same token, but the yufta that Rabbi Yosef, a question Rabbi Yosef said the famous saying, like Yishbach Adam may boiroy, a person should not pour out the water from his cistern if he doesn't need it anymore, if if others need it. In other words, according to him, you should give the chalitza dafka to the one you gave the maimer to. Why? Because the one you gave the maimer to, you're going to have to give a get. So she'll be disqualified from marrying a kohen. So might as well give her the chalitza. Why ruin the co-wife from marrying a kohen? So, and here it says, now Mishnah clearly, you give the chalitza to the other wife. Neither case that you said is correct. You cannot bring anything to prove our Mishnah. Why? Because Miktan is Mishnah say you should give to chalitza to the wife. The chalas tani, the eved. The Mishnah, if he did it, and the Mishnah continues, get lazu. He gave to get to one Yevama, get to another Yevama. The din is that he has to not give them chalitza. Gets sort of now this allows him from marrying either one. He has to give chalitza. Let me say Rabbi Bar Abuna. This is a support. Rabbi Bar Abuna, how? Rabbi Abuna said chalitza psula. He holds interesting about chalitza psula. A chalitza where you can never turn into a yibam. So it's a weaker chalitza. Every one of the Yevamas require. He holds that the Yevamas require a release from every one of the brothers. And since it says in the Mishnah, it says get lazu. Wasn't the Mishnah's lashon get lazu? They both need a chalitza. It sounds like they both need a chalitza. No, it's like Rabbi Huna that you need a chalitza from each brother because a weak chalitza. A chalitza that cannot turn to yibam is a weak chalitza. And we said, well, they both need a chalitza. They're both possible kohen. And we don't say just give chalitza to one of them, the other one automatically is exempt. Says the Gemara, must not prove. My tzricha, when it says that they need, not that they these two Yevamas, tzricha is the alma that generally these cases need, but only one of them needs a proof, a chalitza. Says the Gemara, okay, lema says that further. Get lazu v'chol lazu. He gave a get to one of the Yevama, and then he gave a get to the other Yevama. Again, the Gemara same question. Same thing. Because the Mishnah repeats the same case 3 times. If it happened, doesn't in any way the same one we had a few lines before. Support Shmuel or Rabbi Yosef. Cholat. What happens if he gave a chalitza and he gave chalitza or cholat? And then so on. Then he did other things afterwards. The least the name, same question. You tell me after chalitza nothing happens. Why you also mention since you also mentioned the case where you did be a person, then you did other things afterwards? Mention klum. Same the answer before. Because the mission repeats itself, every single scenario. 2 Yevamas and 1 Yavam, 2 Yavams and 1 Yavama. We're going to ask the same questions again and again. Learn ein klum. I talented on. Why doesn't he say that now? Mishnah only mentions the chalitza. More important, Ben Yavam Echel Yavam. Mishnah says whether it makes no difference if it's 1 Yavam with 2 Yavams, or if it's 2 Yavams and 1 Yavam. And the Amma. Now we had an argument before between Rabbi Yechanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yechanan says kula beisa belavka. Rabbi Yechanan holds that once you give a chalitza to one of the women, it represents all the men, represents all the women. So therefore, the rest of the women are live with, but not because we say that. So the woman that you gave chalitza to from now on, your brother's wife, you gave a chalitza. It's an isra of alav to live with her. It's no longer the isra of karis of your brother's wife. The question is, what about the other brothers? The other brothers, do we say that he represents all the brothers, that they all gave chalitza and therefore they only have a lav? Or do we say that no, as far as the other brothers are concerned, his brother's wife is the Isa Karetz? It says the Gemara, everyone now is only a lav. Why? Because he did the shlichas about everybody else. It's Rosh Mina. If the Mishnah come and tell you that the ain kedushin toivsim b'chayav ilav. So we need to tell you that kedushin, that after chalitza nothing happens because only a chayav ilav, and for as far as the other brothers are concerned, and kedushin And that Taifa could be followed by keep fine. But the Shlokish, I said, there's Nisa Karis, when it's Karis. Of course, after Chalitza, nothing happened, because after Nisa Karis, everyone holds that Kedusha, not Taifas. So what's Chiddush Mishnah? Says Gemara, yes, we do need his last minute teacher, then Kedusha, we need, sorry, most question is, we need to tell you that after the Chalitza, which for all the other brothers, as far as they're concerned, there's an Isa of Karis, that there's no engagement, there's no marriage, no impact. Shloki says, you can be so pedantic. Let me ask you a better question. The time, according to you, Sefer, the end is, it says there, by 2 Yevamim and 1 Yevam, it says, let's say the first one decided to have beer with her. So in other words, it's his wife now. And the second one did a minor. The Mishnah says nothing happened with the second one. And what would you think? Now that she's the married wife of Reuben, and somebody else comes along, it doesn't matter, brother, and gives her Kedushin, of course there's no bearing on it. It's a married woman. Why does the Mishnah have to say it? Each married woman. I you know what? I need the Tana Hatadas Yavam Echad Yevama Acha. Since the Mishnah starts out talking about a single Yavam, a single Yevama, and what the laws are there. Over there, definitely all you have is a lav of la yivna, but everybody, because there's only one man and one woman, and now they gave a chalitza only a lav, and therefore and the Mishnah needs to tell you a chiddush that according to Akiva nothing happened. So since in that case, and then we're giving you the flip side or giving you something similar to that each other case and each scenario, so therefore we mention things which are totally superfluous. He mentions those in the case of two Yevamos, one Yavam, the same thing with one of them. They gave one woman a chalitza, and the other woman you gave minor. And I did Tony stay Yevamim. And once you mention that, mention 2 Yevamim and Yevamach. There's no chiddush there whatsoever. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah further. Cholatz, let's say you did chalitza, then was a minor. You gave you did a minor, and also again you gave her a get, and so on and so forth. Nothing happens after chalitza. I understand why the Mishnah has to mention it. We're talking now about a single yavam and a single yavam, and we're repeating this case here as well. Now, I understand why the case of chalitza, and then you remind me, you tell me that what I would have thought that I would have thought we don't say there's no impact after chalitza. I would have thought in this case maybe we should make some kind of impact. Why? Nigza maimed the boss of chalitza to maimed the kala chalitza. If you had done maimed first and then chalitza, you would have to give a get for that maimed. So therefore, you have to tell me. But the chalitza, you maimed after chalitza, nothing happens, and we're not going to make exeda. People don't understand the difference. Kamashlan because even not great. Ella cholat the nasan get if you did chalitza. And then you gave a get, normally, what's the point of that? If you gave a get before the chalitza, you don't do anything afterwards, just give chalitza. If you gave a get after chalitza, so what are you going to be going? So what's the chiddush in that? Sending one back. The time that according to you, aim a safe, but look at the next case. It said, ball, you did be first, no, it's just told your wife. And then some minor, then you did a minor, or ball, it's your wife, the nussing get. Bishleim of the ball, the nussing get. I understand. In the case of ball, and then you gave a get. And I needed something. I would have thought Nigs get the bossa bila or to get the kamabila. I would have thought that we should make a get after beer. In other words, if you would have after the beer, you would have given her a get. But you still need a chalitza. You still need a chalitza. You know, first there was a minor, then a get. And there's a minor, then a beer, then a get. You still need chalitza or get then a beer. You still need chalitza. In other words, what happened? The commercial because we're not geyser. We're not geyser. We would have thought that we should be geyser a get after bila if you gave a get before bila. If you that we would have thought that you still need to give a chalitza because if you did a get before the beer. You definitely need the beer afterwards is meaningless because once you give a get, you showed you don't want to live with her anymore. You would need a chalitza. So maybe a get after beer, maybe you still need a chalitza to, you had beer with her, then you have to give her a get. Maybe now you need chalitza. I would have thought maybe make a zayda. Come on, you're not geyser. I understand that. Our boy was a mimer. You married her, and then you went a mimer. Normally, it's his wife. What do you have to tell me that nothing happened? Ella, I did the tona cholat was a minor, but no was. Since we mentioned cholat and he did a minor, so therefore we look the next case. But B said the same thing. Tona ball was a minor, and but I did the boil the middle of ball the nothing get. And since by you need ball, and you gave a get afterwards, and we need to learn that case. So therefore, now that you brought it down, so Tana, Nami Cholat nothing gets. You mentioned also Chalitza and you gave a get. This man Shehi, then the mission continues. We said before that there's a machlekes. If you did Beila or Chalitza in the beginning, and anything that happens afterwards makes no difference. But what happens if you did Bia in the middle or the end? I mean, no, you did another activity first, then you did Bia. We had a machlekes. So the Gemara explains. Then that mean what is man shehi. If you did one thing in the beginning, mine get, then you did Bia, and then you did something else after the Bia, it does have some kind of a bearing. And Abdechemi said there's no difference Bia or Chalitza, whether it's beginning, middle, end. Once you do that, it's over. Nothing happens afterwards. Says the Gemara, so Tanakama holds a difference in Bia and Chalitza. Masnisin, so our Tana holds, the Tanakama holds Chalitza, no matter what it is, it ends the relationship, but nothing happens afterwards. But when it comes to Bia, only when it's in the beginning, but when it's in the middle, then something happens afterwards. Since it's a bad Bia, it's a Bia psula, therefore it does have a bearing. And the Chemi holds no difference. Says Gemara is actually a third opinion as well. We'll see. Masnisin like Tana, our mission of the Cheder is not conform with the following Tana. Tana learned. Abba Yosef ben Yechon Yisrael Moshe Rameir. Abba Yosef ben Yechon from Yisrael said name Rameir. Achaz Beila makes no difference whether it's Bia. The Achaz Chalitza makes no difference. Chalitza. B'tchila, if it's in the beginning, ain't Achadeh Klum. But be'emtza b'seif yesh Achadeh Klum. He argues with our Mishnah. He holds, on the one hand, he holds there's no difference between Bia and Chalitza. But on the other hand, he holds no difference that only in the beginning, nothing happens afterwards. But if it's the middle and end, you do something afterwards, something does happen. It has a bearing and you have to deal with it. B'sholosh machlek v'davar comes out as a result of three arguments. Tanakama holds Bia, the Kama hold, the kind of hold Chalitza, nothing happens afterwards. I don't care when you made it. But Bia, only if in the beginning, the first activity, that's nothing happens afterwards. But if you did it in the middle, then since you did something before, we are geyser. Why? The equal and makes it by Bia, because by Bia we can be geyser and geyser. We are geyser, sometime next time something happened before the Bia. If we don't do anything after the Bia, then people think you don't do anything before the Bia either. But Chalitza, the Chalitza, there's nothing to be geyser. Then like a geyser. Comes on and the Chamini says, no, I hold that there's no difference between Bia and Chalitza, and always, no, we're never geyser. Bia nami like a mix, we're not geyser. With the Gamrit, you said before, Ligza Bia Achar a get. Let's be geyser Bia if it happens after a get. We should Bia Achar Chalitza, because next time would be after Chalitza. And Bia after Chalitza, even though it's a lav, maybe it's Chal. Even the Chalitza that Isa made the Yoda. Since Chalitza Vatayda, everyone knows we're not going to make a mistake. Everyone knows that once you have Chalitza, it's over. With the Gamrit, and this is what he says, Ligza Bia Achar Maimer. Let's be geyser Bia if Bia is in the middle. You made a Maimer first. If you had Bia and then you had another Bia, let's say Kiva, let's say two different women, two different wives. Kiva and the Bia, and people might think, well, something happened here. Kiva and the Bia that Isa, since everyone knows that this is the only way you get married to a Yevamos, that Isa, everyone knows you can only marry one Yevamos. And comes along Abba Yosef ben Yechanan ben Chana. So he holds like the Rabbanon, he holds Rabbanon, you are geyser about Bia, but he also holds you geyser about Chalitza and Mishum Bia. Once you geyser about Bia, you geyser Chalitza. Hadna look Rabbi Gamliel. He ends the Pedic of Rabbi Gamliel. Now goes a sixth Pedic. Somebody then goes and has relations with his Yevama. Bain amazed whether was B'Shegi. He thought it was his own wife. Didn't realize that it was his Yevama's sister-in-law. Whether it was not amazed. Amazed means it did it not for the sake of the mitzvah, but it did it for znus. Bain, but whether he was forced. Bain beratza, whether willingly. Now the Tosfos has a whole issue here. What does beratza mean? Isn't beratza and amazed the same thing? So first beratza can mean that he willingly do the mitzvah. And then what's the chiddush? So Tosfos maybe just mention it derech agav. However, Tosfos says that could be another way of learning pshat. Whether he did it b'shayig amazed by he was forced into it, or whether he did it b'ratzim but he was forced into it. Then we continue. I feel even if it was b'shayig, he did everything as his wife, and she did it for lust. Who amazed it? He did it for love. Who honors he was forced into it? But she was willing. He understood she was forced into it. He wasn't. Whether you merely just started the relationship and the intimate relationship and then it completed. And whether it completed, all of these instances that we'll see in the Sikkim tomorrow, you are kind. But like chilik it makes no difference between one B, whether it was the normal way of having marital relations or whether it was the abnormal way. Marriage relations, or whether it was just the beginning, or whether it was the end. Likewise, it's likewise if someone has a relation to any of those that are forbidden for incest. Or those are possible for you, Marshal Alman, the Kohen Gadol, or Grusha, the Chavir Hedger, or divorcee, or a Chavir Hedger. Or a mamzeres unasinuli, so it's forbidden. Or Bas Yisrael and mamzer, or Bas Yisrael and mamzer. See, possible, it's possible. What do you mean possible? For example, if a Kohen marries a grusha, what do you mean possible? It's possible to marry in the first place. Possible, Rashi says, means you can no longer go back home and eat from the truma. But so Mama said possible. It makes no difference to be what kind of be it is. Just like by Yevamos, it makes no difference. You start, you finish, and so on. Said the Gemara, my feel what do you mean feel even for shaking? Blame the boy come. It means like this. Blame the boy who we were building up. Not only if he was b'shayge, he came a chadno mitzvah, she intended to a mitzvah. You know, who made it? He came a mitzvah, or he did the for lust, and she did a mitzvah. I feel who shayge, they both did it for the wrong reasons. The Tavai look at Bachadash and mitzvah, neither one intended for mitzvah for lachi kana. You don't have to have in mind a mitzvah. You are kana. In the Gemara we learned a few days ago where we said that he thought that after he gave a chalitza there, and we compared it to Oydem Nefse Ager, and he gave a mimer, and thinking that he's doing it for the sake of Yevama. Over there, we say that kind of there's no longer Yevama. There, he gave a chalitza, there's no longer Yevama, just an ordinary wife. And then you had to have kavanah. Here we're talking about as a Yevama. And Yevama is a special case, as we even had mentioned before. Shemayim Nikol is it's a different mitzvah, so the laws are very different. And we learn from Sukkim, you don't even have a kavanah. You don't have to have kavanah for the mitzvah. Learn in the Brais, I feel the name Shagi, the both are Shagi, name is in both are made. Name and both are forced into it. That's what it says. In all these cases, it's a good marriage. Onus the Mastis Lomi in Amish that was forced into it. What does it mean? That a guy forced him into it. Ubola, and he had relations with his sister-in-law. Rabbi said, "Ain't his level when it comes to having marriage relations. No thing is being forced into it, because if you're saying kishi eladas, because in order to be able to have proper relations, you have to be a willing participant. So therefore, if you're a willing participant, what do you mean he was forced into it? Ela b'yoshan, we're talking about that he was asleep. Says the Gemara, that's me forced into he was asleep. Gemara said Yoshan lekona b'yivemta takenakona. Why is a Yoshan nakona? Rashi says because you have no intelligence. You're not a bendas. And if you're not a bendas, you can't have a kinyan. Faces asks, we know that the only reason why a son under bar mitzvah, a brother under mitzvah can't do even because of a pasuk, had it not been for that, he would have been all right. So Taisha did learn. Another problem is he's lacking intelligence. The problem is you're lacking in kavanah. The Taisha Shanam asks, what about a chayder, somebody who's deaf and dumb, and he has no intelligence, and yet we see that the attack is about kinyan. So he says the part over there. Interesting word he said. He said that because they do have kavanah, they have kavanah as best as they can be. A cheder, that's the best they can do. A cotton, that's the best that they can do. And therefore, that's good. But cheder is good enough. For cotton, we need a pasuk. Over here, it's talking about when you're asleep, you're not having kavanah to your full potential. Because when you'd have been up, it would have been very different. So what are being forced into it? Ella, talking about a case, Benitka, a very strange case. That what? But it sort of landed. You were on the roof and you fell down and you landed right on top of your sister-in-law and you had relations with her. Says the Gemara, Rabba says nothing like Agbanika. If you fell off a roof and you landed on somebody and you were excited and therefore you caused them harm. Chayiv, Baba, Borin, Chayiv, and Tsar, never you're Chayiv, and all those the 5 different kinds of payments you have to make somebody for pain and damage and so on and loss of work. But you don't have to pay for shame because as Gemara will say tomorrow, shame is only if you have intention. But you will not be kind to your sister-in-law in such a way. Because why? Because you had no kavanah for the act. Not the kavanah for the key, for the mitzvah. You had no kavanah for the act at all. You landed and you fell down. You did have kavanah for the act. You intended your wife, but your sister-in-law came along and grabbed you, and forced you to go to have relations with her. So therefore, you had intention to have relations with your wife. And they had intention for the act, but they didn't have intention for the mitzvah and for the person, and she made you happy. Okay, Shnei, sister of Chiyah, what's the case of both force? In the case of Chiyah, he said that both force, similar. You had in mind your wife. The Takfu Oivei Kachavim came along, not your sister-in-law came along, told you, because then she would have had it in mind. But now we're talking about getting both coerced. A guy came along with Dovkas that would attach the two together, and you had relations. Continue to go on tomorrow.